only people that believe in us is those in this locker room and in these walls. So we tend to stick together, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
That was Texans wideout Brandon Cooks after the Texans took care of business in week one of the big upsets around the league as they absolutely trounced the Jaguars to get their first win of the year and the first win of the David Culley era. We'll get to all that and more tonight on the Fox 26 Sports Stream. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. I'm Sal Manine, as always, sports producer here at Fox 26. We'll dive deeper into the Texans. What did it mean to get that big win? What does it mean going forward, especially on the road in week two against a team who a lot of people think could be playing in a conference title game and vying for a berth in the Super Bowl? We'll also touch on the Astros, the Rockets making news today as we're still a few weeks out from the start of training camp. And of course, the Astros not only making news, but getting set to take the field. First pitch any moment now up in Arlington after they put up a football score last night in their big win over the Rangers. So we will touch on all that and then some. Again, you can find us every week when we do this at all points on our website, fox26houston.com. You can go to our YouTube channel, just search Fox 26 Houston in YouTube, and then of course on our Facebook page. We hope everybody's staying safe, trying to stay as dry as you can out there after the weather. We will continue to have updates for you all night long, not just on fox26houston.com, but certainly this evening, starting with Fox 26 News at 9. All right, we got to start with the Texans, though, and not a lot of people thought that this was going to be a big year for the Texans. Obviously, it's just game one of 17, but to go out there in your first game with a new coach, a new coaching staff, a new quarterback, all the questions about the quarterback position going further down the road, and to put up a win when it actually counts definitely says something for the Texans. A 37-21 victory over the Jaguars. Wasn't even that close. The Jags scored with like 2 seconds left on the clock in the fourth quarter, when by then the Texans had turned it into a lot of very vanilla things on offense, just trying to run the ball, run out the clock, and get out of there healthy and with a win. So a dominant performance in really all three phases. The Jags looked like a team with a first-time NFL coach and with a brand new rookie quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And the Texans look like a team that, yes, are they ready to go out there and beat the Kansas City Chiefs or beat the Buccaneers? No, but they look like a team that had a lot of veterans and that was the more disciplined and more prepared team. And that's really what you saw. 3 takeaways for Lovie Smith's squad on defense. They were able to run the ball, play physical football, and then that set up the play action. And Tyrod Taylor, he may not be a future Hall of Famer, he may not be a Pro Bowler, but he's a guy who's got a lot of football under his belt. And when healthy, he can do some things. He's taken teams to the playoffs and kept teams in games and kept their season alive when he's able to stay healthy. And you saw that as he racked up more than 300 yards of total offense, 21 of 33, 291 and 2 touchdowns through the air, and then 40 yards on the ground rushing. And even then, it was at times keeping plays alive. He had that huge setup to Brandon Cooks right before halftime where he managed to avoid a sack, spin out, scramble, keep his eyes downfield, and then found Brandon Cooks just all alone behind the defense for what amounted to a 50-yard pickup and set up the last Houston touchdown before the half. And this game was really over at halftime. It was a 20-point lead for the Texans. And like I said, they were able to really take their foot off the gas and just cruise the rest of the way. Let's hear from some of those involved about the Texans getting off to that great start in week one. Here's the new head coach, who is now undefeated as an NFL head coach, David Culley.
Let me just say this. This football team expected to win. We expected to win. We're not surprised simply because we played good football today. I thought at the very end we lost our composure a little bit with some penalties, but this football team expected to win today. And we knew if we did the things that we had been practicing, we did the things that are winning football, that we'd have a chance to win the game, and we did that.
And he's right. The Texans looked like the team that was better prepared and was more disciplined. And he mentioned the penalties, and that's one thing that he wants to improve upon going forward. A lot of, if you wanted to try to pick any nits with this Texans team, a lot of those things were happening in the second half after they had already gone out there and really put this game away. Now, does that mean that they're going to go on the road this week to Cleveland, to a Browns team that nearly upset Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead, and now the Texans are going to upset them? Remains to be seen. There's a reason that they're the underdogs going into this, and week 2 will start to give us a better idea of just what this Texans team is. But we mentioned it even before the regular season started, that if they're able to stay healthy enough on defense, Lovie Smith's scheme and his background as a defensive coach is good enough that it's going to keep the Texans in games. I was never one of those ones who bought into the idea of, oh, they're going to be the first team to go 0-17. Obviously, if maybe they had a ton of injuries during training camp, you could start saying that. But just based on what we've seen from Lovie Smith throughout his NFL career as a defensive play caller and as a coordinator, you know that he brings something to the table. And that was a question mark for this team coming into the year. Remember last year, they were historically bad on the defensive side of the ball, not just in terms of the yardage and points that they were giving up, but their inability to generate takeaways. And they picked off Trevor Lawrence 3 times, got in his head, were able to rattle him, make him seem very much like a rookie playing his first NFL game. And they were able to turn it into points on the other end. And sometimes you have to just keep it simple. And that's what they were able to do in week 1. And it's something that David Culley's alluded to all throughout training camp, is they're going to try to play physical, run the ball, and hope that that sets the tone. And for as much as you want to talk about the innovations we've seen in football over the last 5-10 years and everything that Sean McVay and his coaching tree and what they're doing in Kansas City with Eric Bieniemy and Patrick Mahomes and the new generation of quarterbacks that you're starting to see, there's some football truths that will always remain. And if you can run the ball and you can play defense, you're always going to have a shot. And that's what the Texans were able to do well on Sunday. And we'll see if it translates when now they're going to take a big step up in competition. It's another Sunday afternoon matchup, noon kick Central Time. It's going to be up in Cleveland against a Browns team that had KC on the ropes in week 1. And if it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill doing Pat Mahomes and Tyreek Hill things, then the Browns could be saying that there's a reason they're getting all this talk as a possible Super Bowl contender. 4-point loss in Arrowhead. Baker Mayfield threw for more than 300 yards. They ran for 153 yards as a team. And so now the Texans are going to have to contend with what on paper is a very good offense. And as they've showed at times, when they're healthy, the Cleveland Browns can run with anybody, and a defense that is going to be a huge step up from the Jags. Because let's not forget, as big a name as Urban Meyer is, and Trevor Lawrence is this vaunted quarterback and the generational talent and the number 1 overall pick, the Jaguars were still the worst team in football a year ago. And that's who the Texans beat at home. So we'll see what to make of it as week 2 rolls along. Let's get one more in while we're still talking Texans. Here's Tyrod Taylor on his big day and getting a win as the starting quarterback for the Texans.
Fun. It's never about me. It's about coming out and doing whatever it takes to help the team win. And ultimately, we came away today with the win, and that's always fun. I was excited. It was good to have fans back in the stadium. I mean, last year playing in LA, we didn't have any fans in the home game. So just to have that atmosphere back was definitely fun. And looking forward to each and every week just being able to play with the great group of guys that we got in the locker room and competing.
Now, Tyrod's mobility and the fact that he's been there before were a huge asset for the Texans in this one, and that's what they're going to need going up against a defense led by Myles Garrett and the Browns this week. We know that the Texans the last few years have put so much time, money, and energy into the offensive line, and really so many of the reasons that they're in this situation that they are organizationally in terms of lack of draft capital and all the things going on behind the scenes that were affecting the Texans was because of how much they struggled to try to rebuild and adjust this offensive line. And so we're going to see now, as you take that next step, how does it match up against what is one of the better defenses in the NFL and one of the premier pass rushers in A&M's own Myles Garrett. So again, a noon kick in Cleveland this Sunday as the 1-0 Texans, the leaders of the AFC South, will try to show if it was just a fluke, if it was just the fact that they played the worst team in the league, or if maybe there's something there. I'm not ready to buy into the whole, I know Bill Simmons likes to use the Ewing theory, named after when Patrick Ewing left the Knicks and then they got red hot and made that run to the finals in 99. I'm not ready to say that this Texans team is all of a sudden going to win 8-9 games and make a run at a playoff spot. But the fact that they play in the AFC South and they have a solid defensive philosophy, yeah, they can mess around and win 3 or 4 games. And we'll have to see after they play a team like Cleveland what it means in terms of, can you actually start to say Ewing theory? It does mean that David Culley is 1-0, and among the many people congratulating him, he got the game ball from the players in the locker room after the game. But Astros manager Dusty Baker, actually before today's game, the Astros are up in Arlington, Dusty said that he took time to call David Culley and congratulate him on getting his first win as an NFL head coach. Culley, of course, has been in the league forever, been an assistant on some really good staffs under some great coaches like John Harbaugh and Andy Reid. But Dusty Baker wanted to call David Culley and congratulate him. And David Culley said that meant a lot to him. He texted Fox 26 Sports earlier this evening and said, it was great to hear from Dusty. When I first got hired here, he was one of the first people that called me and congratulated me. He also invited me and my family to a game this summer. Because of COVID, I didn't get to see him, but I did get down to the game. He's one of the most well-respected managers, and he was the same way as a player. I've always been a big fan of his. We share some mutual friends in the business. Also, our defensive coordinator here, Lovie Smith, and he knew each other pretty well. It was great to hear from him. As good a player and manager that he has been, he is a better human being. I have the utmost respect for him. So Dusty Baker giving a shout out to a coach who is trying to follow in his footsteps and establish himself as David Culley picks up win number 1. So speaking of Dusty and the Stros, they are in the bottom of the first up in Arlington, still scoreless. Looks like Jose Altuve just singled. So it appears the Stros got a man. Oh, excuse me. No. They're in the Jose Altuve singled in the top of the first. That's the Stros lone run. They're in the bottom of the first. So we'll keep you updated as things roll along there. Some Astros news to pass along, though. If you watched the game last night, it was a hitting parade. Everybody was getting hits. The rookie Jose Siri with a couple of home runs in his first start as a major leaguer, finished with 5 runs driven in. Yordan Alvarez got to the 30 home run mark. Everybody was getting in on the action against a team as bad as the Rangers, but starter Jake Odorizzi left after only 32 pitches, only made it an inning and a third before he injured his foot running to first to cover first on a grounder. He's officially been placed on the 10-day injured list. He's going for an MRI for a sore right foot, as they're going to try to see just what is or is not up with Jake Odorizzi, who was only able to last 32 pitches. Fortunately for the Stros, we know that they have depth in terms of their starters, and obviously it was a busy few days on the Jake Odorizzi front. He did not mince words after his previous start before last night when he was pulled after only 5 innings. The Stros have been trying to avoid having Odorizzi have to go a third time through the order, and he was not happy with that. Used some colorful language that said he wished that someone had talked to him. He's not a rookie. He's not new at this. He felt that he should be given the opportunity to try to stretch himself longer in games. The next day, everybody cleared the air. Jake said he talked it out with Dusty. Dusty talked it out with Jake, management. Everybody was happy and on the same page. But then he suffers an injury last night. So we will have to keep our eye on that. But again, Jake Odorizzi to the 10-day injured list. Zach Greinke officially activated as he got the start tonight. So that's what's going on the Astros front. We'll, of course, have more on them and the latest from Arlington tonight coming up on Fox 26 News at 9. All right, I mentioned the Rockets making news, and that is because Fox 26 Sports has confirmed the report from Shams Charania of The Athletic that came out this afternoon, and that's the Rockets and John Wall have agreed to work together to try to find a new home for John Wall. He's planning to report to training camp in the next few weeks once that begins, but he is not planning, and the Rockets are not planning for John Wall to actually play in any games this year. So here's the situation with John Wall. Appeared in only 40 games out of 72 last year. When he was out there coming off that major injury, remember, he basically missed the previous 2 seasons dealing with injury and then surgery and rehab. He looked at times like the John Wall of old, finishing with 20.6 points per game, 7 assists, 3 rebounds. He was able to show off the speed and the burst that made him such a phenomenal point guard before the injury. The big issue with John Wall and why it's not as simple as, all right, well, the Rockets just try to look for a trade partner, is he is owed a lot of money this season and next. $44.3 million this season, and then he has a player option, which you would have to think there's no scenario in which he's going to turn that down right now. A $47.3 million option for the 22-23 campaign. So that's why the Rockets can't just pick up the phone and call up anyone and say, hey, do you want John Wall? Because anybody who brings him on is bringing on a monster contract for a guy who just turned 31, who we know has an injury history, and again, only played in 40 games last year. So do you really want to be on the hook for that kind of cash for a guy who at any point could suffer another injury and may not be the same guy? So that would mean if you're the Rockets, typically you have to throw some type of sweetener into the deal to say, all right, we want you to take on this veteran. He can help a lot of teams. And certainly if you're the Rockets and you're rebuilding, that's where you kind of get into this catch-22 situation of, well, if you have John Wall out there, maybe your team ends up winning 3, 4, 5, 6 games more than they might have. And that may be the difference from you perhaps picking in the top 2, 3, 4, or 5, and then maybe picking 7, 8, or 9 in the draft. And if you're the Rockets, you're just trying to accumulate young assets right now as you try to rebuild. And that's part of the reason why the Rockets have decided that John Wall is not a part of their future in the near term and certainly in the long term, given his age, is because they want to see what do they have in all these young guys, namely Jalen Green, the 2nd overall pick, Kevin Porter Jr., who's only 21 years old and showed some great things down the stretch after the Rockets traded for him, had him do a stint in the G League, and then brought him up. And once he was given the keys as the primary ball handler, he was able to do some really nice things that showed you why at times coming out of high school and college, he was so highly regarded. Remember, he had that 50-point outburst against the Timberwolves. So for a 20-year-old to go out there and drop a 50-point game, not against the T-Wolves, against the Bucks, that's certainly impressive. And then you bring into the mix that it's not just Jalen Green, but 3 other first-round draft picks, all of whom were teenagers that the Rockets brought in. So that's why they want to give these young guys as much of a chance to grow and to learn and to see just what they have. You saw some really nice things in the summer league from guys like Alperen Şengün and Josh Christopher. Usman Garuba didn't get to play the entire summer league because he was over in Tokyo playing for the Spanish national team. But you want to get the young guys run, which is why a veteran like John Wall, you would understand from a Rocket standpoint, they want to try to find a new home. But again, it's a lot easier said than done because I've seen people throw out names. Oh, the Clippers could use a veteran point guard like John Wall. Well, if you're the Clippers and you've already got all this big money committed to the likes of Kawhi and Paul George, does you really want to bring on an injury-prone point guard in his 30s who's owed more than $90 million over the next 2 years? And if you're the Rockets, what are you necessarily getting back in return? Just as if you're the Rockets, and whether it is the Clippers or the Pelicans, OKC, we know, is always seemingly ready to make a deal or to try to get something in terms of contracts they can eventually wipe off the books or some kind of future draft picks. If you're the Rockets, you don't want to give up draft picks just to get rid of John Wall's contract. It's not like the Wall contract is what's keeping you from contending right now in 2021 for an NBA title. So that's why it's going to be much easier said than done for the Rockets to try to find a new home for John Wall. So again, right now, John Wall not planning to play in any games. The Rockets not planning to play him, but he will be at training camp and around the team. So at the very least, if you're Houston, you're hoping that a veteran and a guy who's been an all-star, has led teams to the playoffs, can be somebody that these young guys can lean on going forward. All right, another check of the Astros. It looks like we just got our first score of the game. It is 2-0 Texans. Looks like they just got a 2-run homer from Nathaniel Lowe. So 2-0 Texas in the second inning. So we will keep you updated on that front before we get out of here. All right, we do have one more big story to talk about. If you missed it over the weekend, we thought it was just a matter of time. It was no longer an if but when situation, and when has already come. The University of Houston officially invited to a Power 5 conference. They're one of 4 teams that will be joining the Big 12, which now actually has 12 teams in it. U of H, Central Florida, BYU, and Cincinnati all officially given the nod on Friday, as they will join the likes of TCU, Tech, Baylor, everyone else that you see on your screen right now. We know that football drives the bus, and that was the big catalyst for this. And how does being in a Power 5 conference change the outlook for U of H in terms of television money and revenue, and the fact that now they can kind of recruit against some of these other schools that in previous years were able to say, don't go to Houston, playing in the American, playing in even Conference USA, playing in whatever the after the old Southwest Conference dissolved, all the schools that were able to recruit against U of H and say, why do you want to play in those lesser tier conferences? Now U of H is back closer to being on the same level as everybody else. They're Power 5 in name. Surely the television money, when they do eventually start playing in the Big 12, is going to be more than what it is in the American. The Big 12 right now still clearly behind the likes of the SEC and the Big 10, but you'd much rather be a Big 12 school than an American Athletic Conference school right now. And so that's where it stands with U of H. Let's hear from some of the many voices that made this all happen for the Cougars and from the Big 12, as U of H is now set to make the move to the Power 5. They're targeting, it looks like, the 2023 season. They haven't officially set in stone or in contracts when it'll happen, but here's some of the many people who made this move finally come to fruition.
If it would not have happened on my watch this time, I would not be chairman of the Board of Regents as of today. Okay. I would have been a failure, and I could not have dealt with it.
Let's put it a different way. If this hadn't gone this way, I was going to go all Bishop Sycamore and see if I could get a job there. I had my resume ready to go, because if this hadn't worked, I don't think I was going to make it. It felt like, there was a lot of anxiety, and still, we were sleeping with one eye open. I wasn't sure if it was going to all fall apart, if you're going to make the wrong phone call or say the wrong thing at the wrong time. It hasn't really hit yet because the magnitude of it is so great for me personally. But there's moments where you catch yourself and you're like, man, this is going to be really cool.
One can't live in the state of Texas without noticing the things that they're doing. It's that sort of excellence that we like to affiliate ourselves with. The progress of the university is well documented and remarkable. We are going to have tremendous rivalries in our league, and those rivalries are going to be enhanced by the addition of the University of Houston.
But you know who I'm really happy for is our fans. You know, this is all about fans. Understand this is an achievement. You know, we're in a profession where you're judged by achievements. Our school achieved something today. This is great for the University of Houston. It is great for the businesses in the city of Houston.
No one is happier for the University of Houston than UH alum Jim Nantz, the face of CBS Sports.
It is truly one of the great days in the history of the University of Houston. It's been a long time coming, and we've been waiting for this for 25 years, all the way back to when Governor Ann Richards decided at the last minute to take us out of the mix for the new Big 12. It's been a long road back, and it's just a glorious day to be a Cougar.
How big a game changer is this?
It's everything.
Absolutely, without a doubt. People, student athletes that wouldn't take our phone call will now take our phone call. Other schools using, non-Power 5 institution cannot use that against us. It's happened countless times where student athletes would say, well, if, I love Houston, I love the University of Houston, but I want to play in a Power 5 conference. It's just facts. Okay, so how we recruit isn't really going to change.
And there you heard it from Dana Holgorsen, that's something that he and likely his predecessors before him, going back to when the old Southwest Conference dissolved back in the 90s and everybody started jumping ship, and UT and A&M were able to go to the Big 12 and U of H was left on the sidelines. That's been the trump card that so many other schools had over some of the best high school football players in the country. Certainly right here in your backyard in Houston and in the state of Texas, but really anywhere. Any kid who was looking at, say, a U of H, but then also another Power 5 school, those other schools were able to say, well, you're not going to have the same cachet, you're not going to have the same exposure, you're not going to have the same reputation playing in Conference USA or the American as you would playing in the Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10, go on down the list. So again, we don't know exactly when they're targeting the 2023 season. We also don't know exactly what that's going to look like in terms of, are UT and Oklahoma able to get out before then and join the SEC earlier, or do we have at least a year or two of U of H being in the same conference as the likes of UT and OU, and how does that all play itself out? So one of the many things that we will keep our eye on as things continue to unfold. U of H improving to 1-1 over the weekend on the football field as they thoroughly thrashed Rice in the Bayou Bucket Bowl, and they should have another one that they should be able to take care of business with quite easily as they'll play host to Grambling on Saturday night. Again, we'll have much more on the Astros and the Rockets coming up for you tonight on Fox 26 News at 9. And, of course, all the latest on the developments with the weather situation is Tropical Storm Nicholas is seemingly moved past the Houston area, but we'll have all the latest for you on Fox 26 News at 9 and at fox26houston.com. As always, I'm Sal Manine. We thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week.